You know that feeling when someone you grew up watching suddenly disappears from your screen? That moment when you wonder what happened to the person who made you smile, cry, and believe in something bigger? Well, what if I told you that behind the brightest smile on television was a woman fighting battles nobody knew about? Melissa Gilbert, the little girl who captured America's heart as Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, has a story that will absolutely shatter you and then piece you back together in the most unexpected way. At 61 years old, she's finally pulling back the curtain on decades of secrets, and trust me, you need to hear this because what she's been through will change how you see everything. Stay with me because this isn't just another celebrity story. This is about survival, transformation, and a truth so powerful it might just help you understand your own struggles. Let's rewind to 1974. A 9-year-old girl with pigtails and a determined spirit walked onto a television set and became Laura Ingalls Wilder, a character that would define not just her career but an entire generation's childhood. Melissa Gilbert wasn't just acting, she was living and breathing the pioneer spirit every single day for 9 years. Millions of families gathered around their television sets every week to watch the Ingalls family navigate the hardships of frontier life, and at the center of it all was this extraordinary young actress who seemed to have it all figured out. But here's what nobody told you. While Laura Ingalls was conquering the prairies on screen, Melissa Gilbert was drowning in a storm of her own making off-screen. The bright lights, the fame, the constant pressure to be perfect, it all came at a price that nobody talks about when they're handing you scripts and paychecks. Imagine being 9 years old and suddenly becoming responsible for your family's livelihood. Every time Melissa walked onto that set, she wasn't just delivering lines, she was carrying the weight of an entire production on her small shoulders. The show became a cultural phenomenon, and she was the heart of it all. But what happens to a child when the whole world is watching? What happens when you can't just be a kid making mistakes and learning from them because millions of people have expectations of who you should be? Melissa has spoken candidly about this in recent years, revealing that the pressure was suffocating, absolutely suffocating. She had to grow up faster than any child should, and in the process, she lost something precious that she would spend decades trying to find again. And then there was the secret she carried, a secret so painful that she couldn't even name it until she was in her 60s. Throughout her childhood and into her adult years, Melissa experienced something that made everyday life excruciating. Certain sounds, specific noises that most people barely notice, would send her into an absolute tailspin of rage and panic. The sound of someone chewing, the click of a pen, the rustle of paper, these ordinary sounds became instruments of torture. She would sit at dinner tables feeling like she was going to explode, sit in quiet rooms wanting to scream, and nobody understood why. Not her family, not her friends, not even herself. She thought she was broken, fundamentally flawed in some way that made her a bad person for feeling such intense anger over something so seemingly trivial. It wasn't until 2024, at the age of 60, that Melissa Gilbert finally got the answer she had been searching for her entire life. She was diagnosed with misophonia, a neurological condition that causes certain trigger sounds to provoke intense emotional and physical responses. This wasn't a character flaw, this wasn't her being difficult or demanding, this was her brain being wired differently. Can you imagine living 6 decades of your life thinking you're the problem, only to discover that there's actually a medical explanation? The relief, the validation, and simultaneously the grief for all those years spent suffering in silence, it's almost too much to comprehend. Melissa described this discovery as life-changing, finally understanding that the anger and rage she felt weren't her fault, that she wasn't a terrible person for reacting the way she did. But the misophonia diagnosis was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Melissa's journey through Hollywood was paved with both glittering successes and devastating failures. After Little House on the Prairie ended in 1983, she faced what so many child stars encounter, the terrifying question of what comes next. She was typecast, forever associated with that little girl in pigtails, and the industry didn't know what to do with her as an adult actress. The phone stopped ringing as frequently. The offers became fewer and farther between. And in that silence, in that void where validation used to live, Melissa began to spiral. The financial troubles hit like a freight train. By 2015, news broke that Melissa Gilbert owed the IRS over $360,000 in back taxes. $360,000. Can you imagine that number hanging over your head? She was open about the reasons, attributing it to a stalled acting career, the recession, and the devastating financial impact of divorce. She said it herself, that perfect storm of financial difficulty had swept through her life and left destruction in its wake. Here was America's sweetheart, the girl who represented wholesome values and pioneer resilience, publicly facing bankruptcy and tax liens. The shame, the embarrassment, the feeling of having failed not just herself but everyone who believed in her, it was crushing. And let's talk about those relationships, because Melissa Gilbert's love life reads like a Hollywood screenplay full of passion, heartbreak, and hard-earned wisdom. In the early 80s, she was engaged to Rob Lowe, yes, that Rob Lowe, during the height of their young fame. They were the golden couple, beautiful and talented, seemingly perfect for each other. But Melissa has described that relationship as tumultuous, even horrible at times. They were both so young, both navigating the intensity of sudden fame, and both dealing with their own demons. The relationship couldn't withstand the pressure, and they eventually went their separate ways. Then came her first marriage to Brinkman in 1988. They had a son together, Dakota, and for a while, it seemed like Melissa had found the stability she craved. But the marriage ended in divorce in 1994, another relationship crumbling under the weight of Hollywood pressures and personal incompatibilities. 3 years later, in 1995, she married actor Boxleitner, and together they had a son named Michael. This marriage lasted 16 years, which in Hollywood terms is practically a lifetime. But in 2011, Melissa filed for divorce, and once again, she found herself starting over, rebuilding her life from the ground up. What many people don't realize is that with each of these divorces came not just emotional devastation, but financial ruin. Divorce is expensive under any circumstances, but when you're dealing with community property, assets that need to be divided, child support, and attorney's fees, the costs become astronomical. Melissa has been transparent about how these divorces contributed to her financial struggles, how the combination of a slowing career and multiple relationship failures left her in a position she never imagined she'd be in. Here was a woman who had worked since she was 9 years old, who had been a household name, suddenly struggling to make ends meet. The irony wasn't lost on her, and it certainly shouldn't be lost on us. But here's where Melissa Gilbert's story takes a turn that will absolutely blow your mind. In the midst of all this chaos, all this pain and struggle, she made a decision that changed everything. She decided to stop fighting against aging, stop fighting against reality, and start embracing who she actually was. You see, like so many women in Hollywood, Melissa had fallen into the trap of trying to maintain a youthful appearance at any cost. She had gotten breast implants, nose jobs, Botox, fillers, you name it, she had tried it. She described looking in the mirror and not recognizing herself, saying she looked like the spawn of Satan with her over-processed appearance. Her hair was too red, her face was frozen, and nothing felt authentic anymore. So she did something radical. She removed her breast implants. She stopped the Botox and fillers. She let her natural gray hair grow in. She quit Hollywood and moved to a cabin in the Catskill Mountains with her third husband, Timothy Busfield, whom she married in 2013. This wasn't giving up, this was waking up. This was a woman finally saying enough is enough. I'm going to live life on my own terms. She started a podcast called Modern Prairie. She began writing. She took roles that spoke to her soul rather than her bank account, and she reconnected with what mattered most, her family, her health, and her authentic self. The transformation wasn't easy. Melissa has spoken about the addiction to youth that Hollywood creates, how once you start with the cosmetic procedures, it becomes this never-ending cycle of trying to maintain something that's fundamentally unsustainable. She talks about waking up one day and realizing that she had become a slave to this pursuit of eternal youth, that she was spending enormous amounts of money and energy on something that was making her miserable. The decision to stop wasn't just about vanity, it was about freedom. It was about reclaiming her face, her body, and her life from an industry that profits from women's insecurities. And then came the health challenges that would test her in ways she never anticipated. Melissa has undergone multiple spinal surgeries, including a life-altering procedure in November 2020. She suffered from deteriorated discs in her neck, bone-on-bone grinding that caused excruciating pain. The surgeries gave her artificial discs where her own had been completely obliterated. Imagine the physical agony of that, day after day, trying to function while your spine is literally falling apart. And this wasn't a one-time thing. She had multiple surgeries over the years, each one carrying risks, each one requiring months of recovery. In 2024, Melissa also revealed that she had been diagnosed with cellulitis, a bacterial skin infection that can be extremely dangerous if left untreated. She shared photos from her hospital bed, showing the reality of illness without filters or pretense. This is the same woman who once had to maintain a perfect image, now sharing her vulnerable moments with complete honesty. The message was clear: this is real life. This is what aging and health struggles look like, and there's no shame in it. But wait, there's more to this story, and it gets even more emotionally complex. In early 2026, Melissa's current husband, Timothy Busfield, found himself facing serious legal trouble. He was charged with child sex abuse allegations, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. This is the man Melissa has called her soulmate, the person who helped her rebuild her life after so much chaos. The news sent shockwaves through the media, and suddenly Melissa was thrust back into the spotlight for the most painful reason imaginable. She wrote an emotional letter to the judge defending her husband, deleted her social media accounts to escape the harassment and judgment, and struggled to navigate this extraordinarily difficult time while maintaining her dignity and protecting her very large blended family. Melissa shared in an Instagram post before deactivating her account that this has been an extraordinarily difficult time for her family. She expressed her commitment to standing by her husband while also dealing with the public scrutiny and private anguish of such serious allegations. Regardless of the outcome of the legal proceedings, the emotional toll on Melissa is undeniable. After fighting so hard to find peace and stability, she's once again facing a crisis that threatens to upend everything. The strength it takes to stand by someone you love while the whole world is watching and judging is immeasurable, and whatever your personal feelings about the situation might be, you have to acknowledge the courage it requires. Now, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in these celebrity stories, the political chapter of Melissa Gilbert's life. In 2015, during the height of her financial troubles, Melissa announced that she was running for Congress in Michigan's 8th congressional district as a Democrat. It was an unexpected move that surprised many people. Here was this actress, known for playing wholesome pioneer girls, stepping into the brutal arena of politics. She ran on a platform focused on healthcare, education, and working families, issues close to her heart based on her own struggles. But the campaign was short-lived. Between the revelations about her tax debt, ongoing health problems that required surgery, and the intense scrutiny that comes with political life, Melissa withdrew from the race. She released a statement saying that she needed to focus on her health and getting her personal affairs in order. Some criticized her for not being serious about the campaign, suggesting it was just a publicity stunt. But those close to her knew the truth. She was genuinely trying to make a difference, trying to use her platform for something meaningful, but the timing was all wrong. She wasn't physically or financially ready for that battle, and she was wise enough to recognize it and step back. The thing that strikes me most about Melissa Gilbert's story is the sheer resilience of this woman. Think about everything she has faced: childhood fame and its pressures, an undiagnosed neurological condition that made daily life torturous, 3 divorces, financial ruin, tax debt, multiple surgeries, the struggle to maintain relevance in an industry that discards women over 40, the decision to reject Hollywood's beauty standards, and now standing by her husband during a legal crisis that could destroy everything. Any one of these challenges would break most people. But Melissa is still here, still fighting, still showing up, and still telling her truth. What can we learn from Melissa Gilbert at 61? First, that suffering in silence helps nobody. Her decision to finally speak about her misophonia has helped countless other people who struggle with the same condition to understand that they're not alone, that they're not crazy. Second, that financial struggles can happen to anyone, regardless of how successful you've been. There's no shame in falling on hard times, only in refusing to be honest about it and refusing to work toward a solution. Third, that the pursuit of eternal youth is a trap that will steal your peace, your money, and your authentic self. Melissa's decision to age naturally is revolutionary in a culture that tells women their value decreases with every wrinkle and gray hair. Fourth, that love is complicated, messy, and sometimes means standing by someone when the whole world tells you to walk away. We don't know all the details of her husband's situation, and we shouldn't pretend to, but we can acknowledge that Melissa is making choices based on information and relationships we're not privy to. Fifth, that reinvention is always possible. Melissa didn't stay stuck in her little house on the prairie identity. She has continuously evolved, tried new things, failed, gotten back up, and tried again. She's written books, hosted podcasts, performed on stage, worked in film and television, and lived a remarkably full life despite the setbacks. And finally, perhaps most importantly, Melissa Gilbert teaches us that your value isn't determined by your fame, your bank account, your relationship status, or your appearance. Your value is inherent. It exists simply because you exist. All the external stuff, the accolades and the awards and the magazine covers, they're wonderful when they come, but they're not who you are. When all of that gets stripped away, when you're left with just yourself, that's when you discover what you're really made of. Melissa has spoken extensively about finding peace in her cabin in the Catskills, living a simpler life focused on family, gardening, and meaningful work. She talks about how freeing it is to not be chasing the next big role, the next paycheck, the next validation from an industry that's inherently fickle. She describes waking up in the morning and feeling genuine gratitude for the simple things: her health, despite the challenges, her husband, her children and grandchildren, her animals, the beauty of nature around her. This is a woman who has tasted extraordinary fame and experienced devastating failure, and she's chosen peace over prestige. There's something profoundly moving about watching someone who was once America's sweetheart navigate the reality of being a regular person with regular problems. We put celebrities on pedestals and forget that they're human beings with the same fears, insecurities, and struggles we all face. Melissa Gilbert's willingness to be transparent about her journey, to show the unglamorous parts, to admit when she's struggling, is a gift to all of us. It gives us permission to be imperfect, to fail, to keep trying anyway. Her relationship with her children and stepchildren seems to be a source of immense joy and purpose for her. She has spoken about how important family has become, how any job that takes her near where one of her kids lives is immediately more appealing because it means time together. After years of chasing career success and external validation, she's discovered that the most meaningful success is measured in relationships, in being present for the people you love, in building memories that have nothing to do with Hollywood or fame. The health issues Melissa has faced also deserve more attention because they highlight a reality many women experience, but few talk about. The spine surgeries she's endured are serious, life-altering procedures that come with long recovery times and ongoing management. Chronic pain is invisible to the outside world, but it affects every aspect of daily life. The fact that Melissa has continued working, continued showing up, continued being present for her family despite dealing with significant physical pain is testament to her strength. She hasn't let her health challenges define her or limit her, even though they've certainly made things more difficult. The misophonia diagnosis also sheds light on how many people are walking around with undiagnosed conditions, struggling with symptoms they don't understand, feeling broken or wrong somehow. Melissa spent 60 years thinking her reactions to certain sounds meant she was a bad person, that she had anger issues, that something was fundamentally wrong with her character. The truth was, her brain was processing sensory information differently, and it wasn't her fault. How many of us are carrying shame for things that might have medical or neurological explanations? How many of us are judging ourselves harshly for reactions and feelings we can't control? When Melissa talks about her treatment for misophonia and how it changed her whole life, you can hear the emotion in her voice. To finally have an explanation, to finally have validation, to finally have strategies and tools to manage the condition, it was transformative. She no longer has to white-knuckle her way through dinner parties or social situations where trigger sounds are present. She has language to explain to people what's happening, and she has techniques to manage her reactions. This is what proper diagnosis and treatment can do. It can give you back your life. The cosmetic surgery journey Melissa went through is also something many women can relate to, even if not to the same extreme. The pressure to maintain a youthful appearance is relentless in our culture, but it's exponentially worse in Hollywood. Every woman who has ever looked in the mirror and considered Botox, fillers, or surgery understands that pressure. Melissa's decision to stop all of it and embrace natural aging is courageous because it goes against everything Hollywood and the beauty industry tell us to do. She's essentially saying, I'm enough exactly as I am, wrinkles and gray hair and all, and that's a revolutionary act. The financial comeback from owing hundreds of thousands in back taxes also shouldn't be glossed over. That kind of debt is crushing, and climbing out from under it requires discipline, hard work, and probably some sacrifices most people never see. Melissa set up payment plans with the IRS and stuck to them. She took work that might not have been her first choice but paid the bills. She downsized her life and eliminated unnecessary expenses. She did the unglamorous work of financial recovery, and while we don't have a public accounting of her current financial situation, the fact that she's still working, still creating, and not making headlines for financial troubles suggests she's found her footing again. The political aspirations, however brief, also reveal something important about Melissa's character. Despite everything she was dealing with personally, she saw a way she might be able to serve others and make a difference. The fact that it didn't work out doesn't diminish the impulse. How many people, when facing their own crises, would even think about running for public office to try to help their community? It speaks to a sense of responsibility and a desire to contribute beyond herself. Now we're watching Melissa navigate yet another crisis with her husband's legal troubles, and regardless of how you feel about the situation or what you think the truth might be, you have to acknowledge that this woman keeps showing up. She's not hiding, she's not running away, she's standing in the fire once again and dealing with what life has thrown at her. The letter she wrote to the judge shows a woman advocating for someone she loves, using her voice and her platform to support her husband. Whether that support is justified or misplaced isn't for us to determine, but the loyalty and courage it requires is undeniable. What does life look like for Melissa Gilbert at 61? It looks like a woman who has been to hell and back multiple times, who has lost and found herself repeatedly, who has made mistakes and learned from them, who has suffered privately and publicly, and who has somehow maintained her humanity through it all. It looks like someone who has stopped apologizing for aging, for having wrinkles, for having gray hair, for not being the little girl in pigtails anymore. It looks like someone who has learned that peace is worth more than fame, that authenticity is more valuable than perfection, and that surviving is sometimes the greatest success of all. She continues to work, taking on roles that interest her rather than ones that pay the most or offer the most exposure. She's appeared in numerous television shows over the years, including guest spots on popular series. She's done theater work, which she said is incredibly fulfilling because of the immediate connection with a live audience. She's written books, including her memoir, Prairie, which details her life story with remarkable honesty. She's used her platform to raise awareness about causes she cares about, including pancreatic cancer research in honor of her former co-star Michael Landon, who died from the disease. The podcast, Modern Prairie, that she hosts with her husband Timothy Busfield has given her a new creative outlet and a way to connect with people on her own terms. They discuss everything from aging to marriage to career changes to living authentically. It's Melissa Gilbert completely unfiltered, sharing her thoughts and experiences without the Hollywood polish. For fans who grew up watching her, it's a way to reconnect with someone who was part of their childhood while also getting to know the real woman behind the character. Melissa has also become something of an icon in the natural aging movement, speaking out about the pressures women face and the freedom that comes from rejecting those pressures. She's been interviewed extensively about her decision to stop cosmetic procedures, and her message resonates with women of all ages who are tired of fighting against their own reflection. She talks about how much money and energy she wasted trying to look younger, and how liberating it is to simply exist as she is. She's not saying everyone should make the same choices she has, but she is saying that it should be a choice, not a requirement. The story of Melissa Gilbert is ultimately about transformation and resilience. It's about a child star who had to figure out how to become an adult in the public eye. It's about a woman who faced failure, humiliation, and loss, and chose to keep going anyway. It's about someone who looked at Hollywood's expectations and said, "Not for me anymore. I'm going to do this my way." It's about surviving when survival seemed impossible, finding joy after devastating heartbreak, and maintaining hope when circumstances would justify despair. At 61, Melissa Gilbert isn't trying to be anyone's role model or inspiration. She's simply living her life as honestly as she can. But in doing so, in being willing to show the messy parts and the painful parts and the parts that don't fit the narrative of the successful celebrity, she has become exactly that, role model and an inspiration. She shows us that it's possible to survive childhood fame, that it's possible to come back from financial ruin, that it's possible to age with dignity in a culture that worships youth, that it's possible to find love after multiple heartbreaks, that it's possible to keep going even when your body is falling apart. The tears that come when you really consider what Melissa Gilbert has been through aren't tears of pity, they're tears of recognition. We see ourselves in her struggles. We see our own battles reflected in her story. We see the universal human experience of trying and failing and trying again. We cry because she's been brave enough to tell the truth, and that truth gives us permission to tell our own. We cry because resilience is beautiful, even when it comes with scars. We cry because she represents what it means to be fully human, beautifully flawed, wonderfully imperfect, and absolutely worthy exactly as she is. So when you see Melissa Gilbert today, silver-haired and natural-faced, living in her cabin and focusing on family, don't feel sorry for her. Don't mourn the loss of the little girl with pigtails who captured your heart. Celebrate the woman she has become, a survivor, a truth-teller, a person who has lived a big, messy, complicated life and come through it with her spirit intact. She's not perfect, she's never claimed to be, but she's real. And in a world full of filters and pretense and carefully curated images, real is the most radical thing you can be. Melissa Gilbert at 61 is proof that your story doesn't end when fame fades, when money runs out, when relationships fail, when your body breaks down, or when life throws you curveballs you never saw coming. Your story continues as long as you keep showing up, keep being honest, keep trying to be better, and keep finding reasons to hope. She's been knocked down more times than most of us can count, and she keeps getting back up. That's not just inspiring. That's heroic in the truest sense of the word. So the next time someone asks you what happened to Melissa Gilbert, you can tell them she's doing exactly what she should be doing, living authentically, loving fiercely, and showing the rest of us that it's possible to face whatever life throws at you and come out the other side still standing. And if that doesn't move you, if that doesn't make you feel something deep in your chest, then you haven't been paying attention to what really matters.